Take a moment for your body. Take a moment for your mind. Take a moment for your spirit. Take a moment to be well. Take a moment to be healthy. Take a moment when you pray. Take a moment for worship. Take a moment every day. Take a moment for your body. Take a moment for your mind. Take a moment for your spirit. Take a moment to be well. Take a moment to be happy. Take a moment when you pray. Take a moment for worship. Take a moment to show you care. Take a moment to show you care. Just to show how much you care. Yeah.
Good evening. Welcome. It is Thursday and it is time for Healing Moments. We're so glad that you could join us here on Healing Moments, those of you on YouTube and on Zoom. For those of you watching on YouTube, we would like you to subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell so that when we are on, you will become alerted. Now, don't forget to share as well because we love you to share. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome to Healing Moments. It's an interactive program designed for you with your health in mind. Now, we always start with our devotion and a word of prayer. So here to do that this evening is Sherry Sober.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Good evening, everyone. As we begin our healing moments, let's just bow our heads for a word of prayer. Our kind and ever-loving Father, we thank you for bringing us to this point of the day. We thank you for being with us at every step. And as we are about to engage in discussion on nutrition and good health and eating, we pray that everything that is said and done would be acceptable in your sight, and that at the end, we would go away feeling more informed and more determined to do what you would want us to do for Christ's sake. Amen. This evening, our devotion is captioned God's signature ingredient. As the month of May, we are looking at dieting, eating disorders. I thought I would share with you about God's signature ingredient. Now, every chef and every famous restaurant, they both have a signature recipe, one that has been perfected and adjusted according to their tastes. Most of the time within this recipe, there's a signature ingredient. Sometimes it is one that is passed down from generation to generation, from chef to chef, and it usually gives the dish a certain, an extra je ne sais quoi, as the French would say, but simply meaning John Public does not know or can't figure out what that ingredient is. Do you know God has a signature ingredient as well? He has a signature recipe. But this ingredient is not secret. It is known to all mankind. Simply put, it is love. Everything that God does out of love, for God is love. John 3:16 reminds us that God so loved that he gave. One of the hallmark characteristics of persons who are suffering from different eating disorders is a distorted image of themselves, negative thought patterns. They look into a mirror like this, and they don't like what they see. And they try and they do all kinds of things, jump through all kinds of hoops to alter or change their image. And you know what happens? They end up making things worse. But thank God there is hope. Even though this disorder sometimes involves psychological intervention, For the believer, for the Christian, there's also a spiritual aspect to recovery. This is centered on the firm foundation of today's Psalm, Psalm 139. Now, when I first started writing this devotion, I initially focused on verse 14. For I am fearfully, I will praise thee, O Lord, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. But as I look through the entire Psalm, oh, that Psalm is filled with powerful promises. I encourage you, take the time to read through Psalm 139, and you will be buoyed up. Your spirits will be lifted. So I want to share with you 4 powerful points for times when our thoughts take us to places where we feel hopeless, scared, and sometimes undervalued. Number 1, if we look at Psalm 139, verses 1 to 6, we are hit immediately with one important fact. God knows us intimately. Isn't that wonderful? He knows everything about us, and no thought can be hidden from him. It can be a great comfort, or it can be quite frightening. God knows us. Then point number 2 takes us through verses 7 to 13. God is always with us. There is nowhere that we can go to be apart from him or to escape from his presence. Point 3, verse 14, almost in the middle of the psalm, the psalmist David drops another eye-opener. God made us wonderfully as the pinnacle of his creation. In essence, that's where our true value comes from. Not from within, not from our culture, not from our degrees or status in life, but from God himself. That makes me feel better. What about you? And finally, David recognizes that the human heart can be shaky, fallible, weak at times. And he cries out to God in verses 23 and 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart, and see if there be any wicked way in me. He doesn't stop there, and he says, and lead me in the way everlasting. So this evening, my friend, if you are in the middle of fear, pain, and uncertainty that the journey of an eating disorder may take you, it is critical that you develop strong, Christ-centered coping skills. And it is possible as well. There are many texts in the Bible that you can use to build yourself up. But our focus for today, Psalm 139. You can achieve freedom through Christ, through prayer and reflection. And whether you are just embarking on the road to recovery or you've been fighting along with what feels like ages, remember the truth that you are fearfully and wonderfully made with God's signature ingredient of love. And if God says you are worth it, then you are. Have a good evening, and remember, God loves you and you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Back to you, Kathy.
Take a moment for your body. Take a moment for your mind. Take a moment for your spirit. Take a moment to be loved. Take a moment to be healthy. Take a moment when you pray. Take a moment for worship. Take a moment every day. Take a moment for your body. Take a moment for your mind. Take a moment for your spirit. moment to be well. Take a moment to be happy. Take a moment when you pray. Take a moment for worship. Take a moment to show you care. Take a moment to show you care. Just to show how much you care. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sister Sherry, for that. I do love Psalms 139 as well, and it inspires me so much throughout the week in my daily work life. Now, usually we have this time for Dr. Dupree and her health segment. But last week we had Dr. Veronica Batson on, and her topic was what's the size of your plate? Now, this Thursday we have another invited guest, and her name is Carrie Ann Bass. And Carrie Ann Bass has a has been a clinical dietitian at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital for the past 8 years and is currently the leader of the Health and Temperance Department at the Way to Calvary Seventh-day Adventist Church. Her work in the clinical setting at the hospital has allowed her to see firsthand the many nutritional challenges our nation experiences. She hopes to use her knowledge in nutrition to assist persons in making better food choices so that they can live healthy lives while serving God. Dr. Carrie Ann, dietitian Carrie Ann Bass.
Good night, everyone. And thank you for having me. I must say, really enjoyed that devotion by Sister Sobers. It reminded me of the good old days when she was at Way to Calvary. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. So today I would first start, but tonight I would first start by sharing my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
So I was asked to talk a bit about dieting and eating disorders. Before I start, I let you all know that eating disorders can affect anyone, any age, but it's mostly seen in the youth or teenagers. So it's something that you should look out for, make sure you talk to the young people about, and make sure that they're well educated about eating disorders and what to do if they feel that they're experiencing this challenge. My brief presentation will have three main objectives. I will first discuss a general healthy diet. I will give a bit of a spotlight on body image and eating disorders, and then I will conclude by talking about preventing and combating eating disorders. When I like to talk about general healthy diet, I always would like to refer back to the Healthy Eating Guide for Barbados. It has been updated and it talks about the food groups. So the 6 food groups, as we talk about a general healthy diet, which used to have, make sure that you have enough or the right amount from each food group. It entails the food group of staples, vegetables, fruits, legumes, food from animals, fats and oils. So as I go through, just go through each one by one. When we say staples, we're talking about those starchy foods that contribute to our carbohydrate intake. And they include breads, which would be our whole wheat bread or different types of bread that we may use on a daily basis. Corn, ground provisions are breadfruit, yam, sweet potato, edibles, pasta, spaghetti, chow mein, lasagna, rice, and cereal. What I like to say here, put in here is we should try to look for the high fiber variety. Try to have foods in this group which are high in fiber. So we try to use the ground provision more so, or the whole wheat or whole grain breads. We have our vegetables, or we have some local vegetables also. Our Asian carrots, we have some overseas one, broccoli, okras, sweet peppers, pumpkin, squash, cabbage, and eggplant. I like to list a variety of colors. Each color represents different nutrients that you will get. So I like to list a variety of different colors. So we have the purples, we have the reds, we have the yellow, the oranges. So you try to make sure that you have a variety of vegetables of different colors in your diet. Next, we have our fruits. We have a lot of local fruits. There are some in season, so you could have some seasonal fruits. We have our guavas, pineapple, mangoes, bananas, oranges, grapes, and watermelon, just to give a sample of fruits. And then we have our legumes, where we will call our peas, our beans, so our lentils, split peas, chickpeas, kidney beans, nuts, peas, and beans. And then food for animals. I know that some of us choose, for whatever reason, not to use food for animals. So this is optional, because some persons do choose a vegetarian lifestyle, and this can be replaced with legumes and meat alternatives. So once you're getting your protein intake from other sources, such as the peas and beans, this can replace the food from animals. But when we say food for animals, we're talking about our eggs, fish, beef, lamb, chicken, dairy, or milk, yogurts, cheeses, ice, and such, the dairy products that we are accustomed having. And then fats and oils. So those will include butters, margarine, vegetable oils, salad dressing, mayonnaise. What I would like to say here, you do need fats in your diet, but in small quantities. It's still essential that you have fats, but I like to say choose the healthier fats. And soft margarines would be a better option. Those are things that are liquid or soft at room temperature. So, and you try not to have the saturated fats and the trans fat, things like the butter, the hard margarines, and lard and shortenings. Those fats have saturated fats and trans fats, and those are things that we try to stay away from. The general message from the Healthy Eating Guide for Barbados is to enjoy a variety of vegetables every day. So vegetables are something that you should eat on a daily basis. Enjoy a variety of fruits every day. Eat a variety of staples every day. And like I said, we want to choose high fiber qualities, high fiber varieties. Choose to eat a variety of legumes every day. Eat a variety of foods for animal every day. And you can use legumes and milk alternatives if you're a vegetarian. Choose to eat less fat and fatty foods every day. And I would like to add, choose foods and beverages with less added sugar every day. So we're trying to curb or control the amount of sugar that we may be having on a daily basis. And choose food with less salt and sodium every day. And I'd like to place this in because nutrition and exercise go hand in hand. Engage in physical activity every day. So this month is Nutrition Month in Barbados. So we'd like to promote healthy guidelines for Barbados. How much do we need? So I call up a lot of food items from different food groups. Let's just give you a general idea of throughout the day, what is your total intake, or what should your total intake looks like. So it gives you an example. So I mean, let's use myself as an example. I'm between the age of 19 to 50, and I'm female. So throughout the day, 8 servings of staples, 4 of vegetables, 3 of fruit, 2 legumes, 2 for animals, and 2 from fat and oils. So you notice the fat and oils are not that much. And then if you're a vegetarian, you could just replace some of the foods for animal with the legumes and meat alternatives. And then you have to know what is a serving. So if I'm saying you're supposed to have 8, I'm supposed to have 8 throughout the day, I will have to know what 1 serving looks like. So this just gives you a general idea of what 1 serving looks like. I won't read the full thing, but let's give you a sample. So for staples, a slice of bread would be considered a serving. Or if I'm using a bun, a half a bun. For vegetables, a half cup of cooked would be considered, a half cup of cooked vegetables would be considered a serving. For fruit, a small ripe banana, because I know we have these in different sizes, or a small mango is a serving. Legumes, if you use dry peas, a 1/3 cup of dry peas. Food for animals, 2 tablespoons of skim milk or 1 egg is considered a serving. And then we have the fat and oils. 1 teaspoon of olive oil would be considered a serving. So throughout the day, you could have your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then at the end of the day, you will have these 8 servings of staples, 3 servings of fruit, and so forth. So you spread it throughout the day. And I believe that it was said that last week they talked about the plate, but this is what a general healthy plate looks like. So half your plate in general should be vegetables. Where we have our fresh, or we have our cooked or steamed vegetables. I like to say have at least 2 different colors, 2 different varieties, just to make sure you're getting added nutrients. Then the quarter of your plate would be your starch. I like to get the high fiber starch. It could be a ground provision. And you can make sure that it's high in fiber. And then the other quarter, the remaining quarter would be your protein, lean protein, baked, boiled, stew. Remove the fat from the skin if you're using chicken, or you could put your lentils or peas here. But this is what a general healthy plate would look like. But you know, unfortunately, on most occasions, we have the starches where the vegetables are, and we have a little slice, a little portion of vegetables or coleslaw here. So we're trying to switch them around, have more vegetables, and we will still have starch, because it's essential that we do have a starch, but less starch and less protein. So we want to make sure that we're eating adequate amount of vegetables. And as I alluded to, some persons may be vegetarian or vegan, so they do get protein. They can get their protein from the beans, they can get proteins from lentils, nuts, things like that, tofu, if we choose to eat tofu, seeds, like pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds. So they still have an adequate diet once you can get enough protein from these protein-rich, wholesome foods, peas and lentils, etc. So now we'll start about to get to the meat of the matter, so to speak, spotlight on body image. Before I talk about body image, I want to talk about disordered eating, which occurs it usually occurs in teens. 10 to 20% of teens engage in disordered eating. So when I say disordered eating versus eating disorder, it's a behavior that would occur, which is not healthy, but it does not occur regularly enough or frequently enough to have a diagnosis of an eating disorder. But it's still significant in the fact that it can have an impact on your health. So it's not happening frequently enough or regularly enough, but it still can pose a problem. So persons might binge and purge, they might exercise excessively or use laxatives or diuretics to the point that they're abusing these products, or they might binge eat. So it's not done frequently enough, but it's still of concern. So signs that somebody might have an disordered eating pattern may be that they have a lot of tummy pain. They might complain of GI or gastrointestinal discomfort. Amenorrhea, if they're female, they might miss their period. So that's a sign that they might be having a disordered eating pattern. Or they might be just losing weight and not trying unexplained weight loss. They can't tell you why they are losing this weight. And then we have this yo-yo diet. In every fad diet, they might try it and they on a diet, on again, off again. So if they are chronic yo-yo dietaries, that may be a sign that they have a disordered eating pattern. Or they might be extremely strict on what foods they may eat, and rigid on what food will be considered healthy or unhealthy, and they have a strict protocol for exercising. So these are some signs and symptoms that someone might have a disordered eating pattern. Body image, this is the most common chronic illness in adolescent females. So as you can see, we have a lot of magazines, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, Twitter, a lot of social media, and what they portray as what we would call a standard beauty or body image. It's not usually realistic. I must say they airbrush a lot of these pictures on magazines, so they're not even the person's real image that you may see on the magazine. But this information is being fed to our children, especially our females, and they do have a distorted body image, or distorted view on what beauty looks like. Even when they're playing with their Barbie dolls and things like that, it gives it a distorted view on what is true beauty, and that beauty comes in different shapes, sizes, colors, skins, and the such. So this is something that we usually face on a daily basis. And I just want to give a history about body image and how the perception of what is considered beautiful has changed over the years. So in the 1900s, there was an actress by the name of Lillian Russell, and she was considered a beauty icon in her time. And actually, she weighed about 200 pounds. So in those days, being thick and shapely in that sense would be or heavy would be considered a standard of beauty. And then in the 1920s, we have Marilyn Monroe. The thinner, flappier look became popular. You know, in the 1920s, we had a thinner, flapper look that became popular. And then in the 50s, I'm aging Marilyn Monroe a bit too much, the curvy figure became the beauty standard. And then down in the 60s, we have our first supermodel, Twiggy, and she was actually less than 100 pounds, but she was considered a supermodel, one of the first supermodels in the industry, and she was just under 100 pounds. And then we have the Jane Fonda. You don't have a lot of workout videos and books and things like that. In the 1980s, where athletic shape was considered beautiful. And I'm not too sure, but this was in 2010, they had the shape was thin and well muscled for that in 2010, but it has changed as time goes by. So as time goes by, the standard of beauty actually changes. I wouldn't go through every single eating disorder. There are many, but I'm going to go through the top 3. The first one that is quite popular is anorexia nervosa. So anorexia in general means loss of appetite, but if you have anorexia nervosa, that's a diagnosis of an eating disorder. So as you can see in this image, she is seeing herself as heavier than she really is. She's very emaciated. She has lost a lot of weight, but what she's seeing in the mirror is not what is reality. So she sees the person may see themselves as fat even when dangerously underweight. And a sign that you have a eating disorder that you're in self-denial, you don't know the seriousness of the problem, or that their weight loss is of concern. And they have undue influence on weight, on self-worth. So they base their self-worth on the current weight that they're at. So that's how they measure their self-worth. And then we have bulimia nervosa, which is recurrent binge eating. So they eat very quickly, a large amount of food in a short space of time. So it's recurrent purging, excessive exercise, and fasting. And they have excessive concern about weight shape, but they don't have the episodes where they're not eating anything at all. So it's a cycle. So you might have a negative self-perception. You're not happy with how you look. You're not happy with the way things are. So what you do in this case, the person would restrict what they eat. They restrict what they eat, they get very, very hungry, and they end up binging. They eat a lot of food in a short space of time. And then because they binge eat, they start to feel guilty, they purge, where they use something laxative, etc., or force themselves to vomit, and then they go back through the cycle of the cycle of the eating disorder. And they typically binge on foods that are easy to eat, low in fiber, smooth texture, and high in calories. So things like cakes and cookies, things that are soft and easy to swallow, ice creams, things that you can eat fast at a time. So then you would have this diagram that shows you how things usually occur. Let's move that a bit. So you have body weight. So you diet and you lose weight really quickly, but then you start to feel tired, fatigue, and decreasing activity. And then because you're not eating, you start to get a food craving. And then you start to, so the weight goes down good, yes, but then you're restricting your diet, and then because you're so hungry and have these food cravings, you return to your former eating habits. Then you overeat, and then you have guilt and shame, a rapid weight gain because you're eating a lot in a short space of time, and then you determine that you want to lose this weight, and then you diet again. So it's a kind of a roller coaster ride, so to speak, in the dieting with regards to dieting. One more, please. My screen is stuck. Right. And then we have binge eating disorder. The last one I will talk about. You have the diagnosis for this is you have recurrent binge eating, so you eat a lot of food. Then you have distress overeating behaviors, but you don't necessarily purge. So it's absence of not eating food or anorexia nervosa. And you have things that may trigger this binge eating where you eat a lot. You might have a stressful day, you might be at school, you have an exam coming up, you're feeling nervous, and you try to relieve that nervousness by binge eating or eating a lot of food at a time. You might have conflict, you might be having conflict with your friends, your spouse, things like that, and that causes a trigger which makes you want to eat. Or you might be frequently dieting, and that may give you the trigger that you really want to eat. And it does have a cycle effect also. Persistent feeling of hunger, obsessive thinking about food. So all you're thinking about is eating. Then you have a trigger. So you have this obsession with food, and something triggers you, anxiety, stress, or depression, and you start to binge or graze with eating constantly, and then you feel helpless, feel guilty and embarrassed, and then you feel hungry again. But you're not purging, you're just having this cycle effect. So forgotten population or males, we usually associate eating disorder with females. But I just want you to know that males do experience eating disorders. It's not as common with males as with females, with males as with females, but it does exist. So we have to look out for that too. So it usually involves men or males who may be in sports. So they want to have this body image because they might be athletic, or the men that may be in modeling, they may be modeling career, or they might be in the entertaining industry. So they have pressure to be a certain way and shape. So that is an issue that we need to be aware of, that it does affect men. And then we have other disorders, we don't really talk about it, but it's called anorexia athletica, which means it's a sports-related eating disorder. And you find a lot in persons who are doing these elite sports, the gymnastics and things like that, where body size and shape is very important in competition. You have to be lean and trim. That if you're a gymnast, it has to be a certain physique in order to compete. And they usually have a lot of pressure from their coaches and from their peers or their team, so they end up having an eating disorder. So that is two populations that we need to be mindful of. And there's some very, very serious consequences, health-related consequences of eating disorder. So if you're anorexia nervosa, you can become anemic, iron deficiency anemia, or one of the other B vitamins anemia of that. You might have impaired immune response. Your immune system becomes compromised. It also leads to increased cholesterol levels because it changes your hormones, and which can affect your blood lipids or your cholesterol, and which in turn can affect the vitamin A and vitamin E. It tends to show up higher. And you can also have low blood protein, dry skin, and a low body temperature. Remember, you need that extra layer of fat to keep your body warm, and you don't have that extra layer of fat, so you tend to be cold. You get very cold very quickly, and your body temperature usually drops. And then the consequences of bulimia nervosa, it does affect your heart. Both anorexia and bulimia affects your heart. So you have heart problems, cardiac problems, because you're constantly purging or vomiting. You have swollen neck glands. And if you're using diuretics, you might have urinary tract infections. Your throat may become irritated or infected from the constant vomiting. And also because you're engaging in this behavior, it does affect your stomach, and your esophagus may become tear. And then because of the stomach acids in your mouth, you can have dental cavities or scurvies. And then obviously you will have shame and guilt because of this behavior. So how do you prevent eating disorders? Sister Sobers alluded to it. She did talk about it. You have to promote self-esteem. You have to make sure that you view yourself in the correct light and promote good self-esteem. Size acceptance. Everyone does not look the same. It'd be a very boring world if everyone looked the same. So size acceptance is very important. And you have to, you have to celebrate the diversity in all sizes and shapes. And you should not skip meals or engage in fad dieting. If they have a diet that tells you you're going to lose a lot of weight, it might be too good to be true. And also with this fad diet, it's not sustainable. You might lose the weight initially, but is it realistic? Can you keep this up for the rest of your life? Most of the time you can't. Encourage eating in response to hunger and not emotions. If you're feeling sad, don't turn to food for comfort. You have to find some other way to deal with your emotions and not respond to it by eating. And you should eat because you're hungry and not because of emotion. So some general tips. You should never restrict food intake to below a amount suggested for adequacy. So we talk about what is an adequate intake. If you find that you're eating your diet is so restrictive, that's a sign that you need to stop. You need to address it. If you're eating so little, you're in your 30s and you're eating amount of food, the portion of food for a 5-year-old. That shouldn't happen. And eat at regularized times. So people eat at regularized times. They have their breakfast, they have their lunch, and dinner at set times. They never get so hungry as to let hunger dictate their food choices. So have a schedule for eating, so to speak. And if you're not at a healthy weight, you have to establish reasonable weight loss goals based on a healthy body composition. So you have to also allow a reasonable time to achieve this weight loss goal. What I usually tell persons 1 to 2 pounds a week is considered reasonable. If you're losing more than 1 to 2 pounds a week, you might be losing fluid instead of fat, or you might even start to lose lean muscle mass, which you don't want to do. You still want to maintain your muscle mass. And also establish a weight maintenance support group with people of shared interests. Get with your friends. People might come and, like, for instance, I go to exercise. I exercise with my friends. You go and prepare healthy meals with your friends, things like that, and they could give you the support that you need. One moment, please. Sorry about that. Focus mainly on proper nutrition and just being a healthy you. So what you should do, eat enough and eat in the right amount so that you're a healthier version of yourself. Try to be healthy in that perspective. And with treating eating disorders, if you do have eating disorder, you might be required to take vitamin and mineral supplements. Your doctor will decide that. If you're deficient, like if you're having anemia, you may be required to take vitamin and mineral supplements, but your doctor will decide if that is needed for you. And then persons who might have in disorders, you might need your support at mealtimes. Persons to sit down with them and eat with them so they have supervised meals. And last, but definitely not least, seek help. You have your guidance counselors at school, you have your pastors, you have your friends. See if you could find an adult that you trust, that you could talk to. Seek God and help. And if you have a friend and you realize that they're not eating well, they're losing a lot of weight, you find them going to the bathroom, they're purging, say something. It's better to say something. Talk to the friend, say your concern, tell somebody that you could trust about it. It's not good to ignore it if you see somebody experiencing an eating disorder, because it's very dangerous and you need to seek help. And like Sister Sora said, this is one of my favorite texts. So Psalms 139 verse 14, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. So God made us. He loves us so very much. He appreciated us. He sent his son to die for us. That shows us our worth to him. So we are worthy of love. We should take care of our bodies, yes, but you should also appreciate yourself and that see yourself the way God sees you, as his creation, and that he truly loves you. So value yourself and embrace yourself. And these are my references. And that is the end of the presentation. I will stop sharing. Stop share. Thank you.
We want to thank you, Carrie Ann Best, for that. Ooh, so much information. And if you had seen me, I had my telephone taking pictures of your diet chart and all those different things. So thank you so much for sharing. It is a lot of information, and I hope that we have taken something from it to use in our daily lives. Thank you so much. For those of you who are waiting on the question and answer segment, I'm so sorry once again, but do keep your questions until next Thursday, where we have the entire segment dedicated to answering all your questions on the past few programs that we had on dieting and eating disorders. For those of you on Zoom and YouTube, we thank you for joining us once again on Healing Moments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so that when we are on, you will know. For those of you on Zoom and on the chat, please do not forget to share our Healing Moments links. If you have any questions and you think that you can't wait until next Thursday to remember them, you can send them to healingmoments22@gmail.com. That's healingmoments22@gmail.com. That is the time that we have. Until next Thursday at 6:30 p.m., we hope you do have a healing moment. See you then.
Take a moment for your body. Take a moment for your mind. Take a moment for your spirit. Take a moment to be well. Take a moment to be healthy. Take a moment when you pray. Take a moment for worship. Take a moment every day. Take a moment for your body. Take a moment for your mind. Take a moment for your spirit. Take a moment to be well. Take a moment to be happy. Take a moment when you pray. Take a moment for worship. Take a moment to show you care. Take a moment to show you care. Just to show how much you care.